Welcome back to Alive and Well's Daily Dose, your daily dose of support. And today, we're going to be talking about how do we support adolescents. Now, we've heard a lot about how do we support our children, and especially our younger children during this time of the unknown. But I actually haven't seen so much out there to support adolescents during this time. So for today's Daily Dose, I'm so glad. And Chrissy is an adolescent therapist with Compass Health here in the region. So, Chrissy, thank you so much for joining us as we're talking about this very important topic, recognizing that this is a unique and difficult time for adolescents as well.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for having me. Um, I think it's important to know what we're talking about. We say adolescence. Adolescence is typically ages 10 to 19, so it's
Mhm.
a big range. Um, and there are some typical behaviors with adolescents, but right now we're in the middle of a sort of collective trauma, and so we may see some of these behaviors increase. So some of the typical things we see is an increased moodiness, more
Mhm.
self-consciousness, maybe focus on body image, more conflicts with the guardians. Parents will notice, or whoever's taking care of them, with a little more argumentative, tend to be a little more critical. These are all really normal behaviors, really opinionated, idealistic. Um, this is what we see during typical times, and we all know we're not in a typical time. And so some of these may increase a little bit, but none of that is really cause for concern. It's
Mhm.
just kind of what happens. They're kind of striking out and creating their own identity separate from their parents, and it's a time of transitions. So some of the things I think that we should keep an eye out for with any of these adolescent behaviors is, yeah, we might see some moodiness, and that may increase a little bit now that we're all out of our routine. But if we see some really like intense, long lasting, very low moods, panic attacks, being very withdrawn, we know adolescents like to spend a lot of time in their room, but if they're really just not coming out of their room, um, and watching out for some of those self-harming behaviors. Um, and I think one of the things we forget about is this is a lot of times when eating disorders start. And so adolescents right now have a lot of time in their room focusing on themselves. They're already very critical. So kind of making sure that their eating habits aren't changing too much. Um, and with some of the self-harm, if you notice all of a sudden your adolescent, either your friend or, I mean, it doesn't have to be just your kid. We all know adolescents. All of a sudden are wearing long sleeves and they're not showing their arms or legs at all, especially as the weather's getting warmer. You might ask to see what's going on, or if those fights are becoming verbally, physically aggressive. Um, and then obviously you want to watch out. This is a lot of time that kids, when they're having trouble at home, they might try running away.
Okay.
And so those are the things we want to really look out for. But some of the other stuff, it's just normal behavior right now, and we want to be careful to. I mean, obviously, it's not okay for your kid to be screaming and yelling at you, but to understand there's going to be a certain level of moodiness and argumentativeness that just comes with this stage. Um,
Yeah. So I know that sometimes, as parents, we may want to push to have our children just talk to us. Can
mhm.
you share with us how is it we might be able to start a conversation with our adolescents during this time? Just talk about what's going on and helping to
Yeah.
kind of process to maybe alleviate some of that anxiety.
Yeah, and I think, when we look at the younger adolescents,
Mhm.
they may have a lot of questions. They are seeing a lot of stuff and they don't really understand, and having that open dialogue is important. And I think with some of our older adolescents, your family may be going through a lot of changes. There may be some big financial stress. A lot of people are losing jobs, and I think kind of bringing them into the fold and letting them know what's going on. You got a 16-year-old; they're not a kid. let
Yeah.
let them let them maybe come up with some ways to help. Um, and I think it's really important to remember that our adolescents are losing a lot right now. We all are losing a lot right now.
Yeah.
But these things in their life, it's not just the seniors. I mean, obviously seniors right now and juniors, they're losing their prom, which is huge. They're losing graduation ceremonies and, class trips and all kinds of things. And they're leaving high school. And a lot of them may be going away to college over the summer or next year. And, they may be losing some of those connections. And so really just recognizing that grief and saying, yeah, not saying it's okay or it doesn't matter, but saying, wow, this really sucks. Like I bet everyone's really having a hard time with this. And then finding a way, like talking to your kids about how can we still celebrate these milestones? You're still graduating high school.
Yeah.
Even if you're not having a graduation ceremony, you don't want to just let it pass. You want to do something big as a family, even if it's baking a cake at home. I mean, we don't really know what's going to be going on in May. And that uncertainty is making us all very uncomfortable, but making plans that are part of what we can control, like celebrations at home, maybe a Zoom party with the rest of the family. And then remembering too, it's not just our seniors. Eighth graders, they're leaving middle school and going to high school next year. And depending on your district, some of them go to different schools. So, and a lot of people move over the summer. And I mean, everybody's lives are kind of up in the air. And so remembering those kids have a lot of loss too, and that it's grief, it really is grief that we're experiencing. And so it's important to just kind of, maybe if kids struggle identifying those feelings, maybe give them some choices. Are you feeling angry? Are you sad? What's going on? I'm here. Don't try to fix it, because it's not really fixable. Just kind of say, this makes sense that you feel this way. Of course you feel this way. Anyone in your position would feel this way. And just sit there and just listen and just be there in the moment with them. I think we're so quick to try to, it's okay, and don't worry about it. But it's not okay. And that's okay that it's not okay. A lot of us are not really okay with all of this, and we shouldn't be. It's okay to just be like, wow, this really sucks. And then I think, besides just being there, discuss what you can do, what you can't do, and then try to build in some positive experiences with your kids. Maybe you didn't hang out all the time. Maybe you were working all the time and they were at school all the time. Or maybe you're one of those families where you had sports and scouts and all these things and you were go, go, go. And now we're here, and what can we do? But there's still a lot of things that we can do. We can go for walks. We can still do some of the family traditions, maybe cook something together. There's a YouTube video to learn every skill under the sun. Maybe pick a skill you want to do puzzles. I mean, there's still a lot of things that we can do together that aren't, our usual activities. So I think, having brainstorming with them, like, what can we do, And it's hard because I think as parents and guardians, and we're stressed out too. We're really stressed out. And so we want to make sure we're not getting too tunnel vision on the finances and what we need to do, and remembering, like, okay, we're a family unit. How can we bring everybody into the fold? One more thing I wanted to say that I think is really important is sleep. So, teenagers especially kind of have a naturally different biological clock than we do. And so I think it's natural. They say like 1 a.m. to 10 a.m. or something is their natural sleeping pattern. And I say right now, like, if you want to sleep in, sleep in. I mean, I'm certainly taking the opportunity to sleep in. I'm not getting up at 5:30 these days. But, you don't want somebody sleeping all day. You want to make sure your kids aren't sleeping all day or not sleeping at all at night. That could be a sign of a bigger problem. So kind of keeping it somewhat scheduled and paying attention to those things is important. Another thing I wanted to touch on is monitoring that social media. There's still a lot of bullying going on. Cyberbullying is a big problem, and it's a big problem during school. And from some of the kids that I talk to in my practice and some of the things I've seen online, it's still a big problem. So really paying attention to what your kids are doing and not getting too lax about that. And then also making sure they have some real interactions with their friends, and not just little Snapchat things or Instagram stuff, like actually like this, like one-on-one, maybe FaceTime or Skype or whatever it is, but make sure they're really talking to someone. I would say like once a day for a really social kid, or if your kid's more, kind of an introvert, at least 3 times a week. I mean, no less than that, so that they still feel connected to people their age.
Great. Now, a couple of things that you mentioned that I want to circle back to that I think are so crucial. One is finding the opportunity to really celebrate. And I think that's so important for us to recognize, especially because we don't know if graduation is happening or if prom's happening. So giving those opportunities to celebrate, I think, is such a wonderful and important idea. The other thing I want to really come back to that you mentioned is is this idea of validating experiences. Even if we don't have answers for it, how do
Yeah.
we validate what's happening?
Yeah. I
So
mean,
can you
go
share a
ahead.
little bit more about that with us?
Yeah. I mean, validating is important to anybody. We need to know that what we're feeling is normal and okay and understandable for the situation. You know, it's we
Hmm.
tend to give a lot of platitudes to people, and it's not because necessarily to try to make them feel better. It's because we're so uncomfortable with their feelings. Oh, it'll be okay. Don't cry. And we want to not do that. We want to be like, yeah, man, let's cry for a minute. Obviously you don't want to cry for a week, but yeah, you can shed some tears and you can have a moment together and just be there with your kid and be like, yeah, this is awful. I know this is so hard. This really sucks. And we're going to figure out a way to get through this together. And I'm here to talk about it. But yeah, it's completely understandable that you are angry. This is not fair. All those emotions are understandable for the situation. And I think that's what you need to let your kid know. And it's okay to be upset and sad about what's going on. We all are. We're all losing stuff and we're all feeling that. We're all feeling,
Oh,
you
and
know,
it seems that we've lost Chrissy.
oh no.
Oh, you cut out there just for a brief moment.
Am I back?
Can you recap what you just shared? You're back.
um, just that we are, I'm not sure where I got cut
Oh,
out, but just that it's it's normal what we're feeling, that we're all feeling these feelings of loss and sadness and fear and anxiety and all this stuff, and to let your kid know that it's okay to feel these, that it's perfectly normal to feel these things, and that we don't always have to make our bad feelings go away right away. Sometimes
yeah.
we got to feel them, to go through them. If we keep shoving away all these bad feelings, we know they don't go away. They don't go away. They just build up. It's like trying to hold a beach ball under the water. Eventually, it's going to pop up. So, we got to feel them.
Yeah.
Another
So,
thing, when we talked about celebrating, is that we have holidays coming up depending on your religion, and we Passover and Easter, and I believe there's a few more. I don't know them all. But holding on to as many traditions as you can. I know, like, if you normally have Easter dinner, maybe it's not the Easter dinner you normally have, but do what you can. Skype with some relatives. Try to keep as much of that in your life um, as possible in these moments. You don't want to just say, well, forget it, we're canceling Passover this year. Like, if it's an important part of your family and something you do it as best you can.
no, I think is going to be crucial for all of us, regardless of whether we have adolescents or not. I mean, our signs may need some more support, general validation, and keeping those celebrations and holding on to you know those true. When are those warning signs out for that?
I'm sorry, you're cutting out a little bit. I can't.
That we may need to a specialist during this time,
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit, and the feed kind of froze
and
out, but
that
I didn't hear your question. I didn't hear your
it's like I
question.
lost you there for a second. Can you hear me, Chrissy?
Yeah, now I can. Hmm.
When is it that we might need to when is it intervene? Um,
Let me see if
what are those kind of warning signs that we may need to watch out for?
I think, I don't know if you can hear me. You're kind of frozen. I think you asked me about warning signs. Um, so I'm going to go ahead with
Mm-hmm.
that. Are you there?
I Yep, asked you about warning signs.
Okay. You disappeared for a second. Sorry. So really, one of those things we want to watch for are any real extreme changes in behavior. If your kid is normally a little argumentative and moody and a little withdrawn, okay. But if they now are so sensitive, they're screaming and yelling about everything. If they are changing their eating habits, never coming out of their room, having panic attacks, crying, like lots of crying spells. I mean, I think we're all crying a little more right now. I know I've had a few moments myself, but if you notice your kid is just crying for all day, maybe if they've become really, really lax about their hygiene, or the opposite, where they've become, very hyper focused on their hygiene. If their eating habits change, are they restricting, binging, purging, things like that are the things you really want to look out for. And I think it's important to have a conversation with your kid if they are exhibiting some of these, like, do you feel like hurting yourself? Have you thought about hurting yourself? It's very important to have that um, conversation. I think there's a lot of people who believe if you bring up suicide, that maybe you're giving an idea, but we know from the research that that's not true. And it's important that we're talking to our kids about that, because kids think about that. It's they don't have a lot of tools sometimes to deal with what's going on, and so they go to extremes. And um, a lot of kids are
Hmm.
cutting now, and with social media and with possible cyberbullying. We know cyberbullying. A lot of people, they'll tell kids to kill themselves. So you want to make sure you are talking to your kid about that. And if you see these issues, just because we are in this lockdown does not mean there are no services available. There are services available right now. I mean, there is the suicide hotline, there's a texting line that you can give to your kid. And right now, there's also places you can go in. I know my agency, Compass Health, has walk in hours from 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, at all their locations. And you can call to get the location. We've got this slide up there. And then BJC, if you're in St. Louis City or St. Louis County, BJC has open access hours at multiple locations, and there are numbers on there to kind of figure out where you need to go. I think they also have a location in Farmington. So don't feel like just because right now we're in this lockdown that you can't get help. Help is still there. And trust your gut. If you think something's really going on with your kid and they really need someone to talk to, hesitate don't hesitate, reach out. And there's a lot of therapy we're doing over the phone. We're doing a lot of telehealth therapy like this, where it's video chatting. So it's important to reach out if you find some of these things going on, especially if your child's having panic attacks, or you think they're developing an eating disorder, or they're harming themselves. These are all really important things to address immediately. Um, Another one, like I said, the verbal or physical aggression. If you're fighting with your adolescent to the point where they are charging at you, hitting you, threatening to kill you, or even with siblings, if you have siblings and that's going on, what used to be just bickering has now turned to harming each other. That's a sign that you might need some outside help. Um, and you can also, if you're in a moment where you really are concerned, or your child has attempted suicide, go to the emergency room. I know that right now it's kind of scary and we don't want to clog up the hospitals, but they're not just there for this virus. They're there for everything. And if you have a child who you think is harming themselves or planning a suicide attempt, you want to go to the emergency room. And I think, when you are having that open dialogue with your child at all times, and you guys, you're working on spending time together daily, even something small, and you're talking about your feelings, you're giving your child that opportunity to let you know when they need help. They may not be able to say, I need help, but they will let you know that their feelings have become more negative, more persistent. So really just being there, letting them know you're there, is the most important thing you can do right now. Having that dialogue, validating those feelings, and just, we're together. We have to make the best of it.
Absolutely. So, no, that's so important to understand. Now, I have a question. if we do see some acting out behavior, I know sometimes the initial response from a parent might be to give a punishment during this time, at a time where we're already isolated. How is it that you may recommend a parent may address any sort of acting out behavior during this time?
Right. I mean, you want to be careful that we're not taking away their only means of communication. Oftentimes the thing we go to is no more phone, no more tablet,
Mhm.
but right now that's it. That's their only way to the outside world. If there is something where there is, an agreed upon thing and a rule that they're breaking over and over again, maybe you can come up with something like, okay, you're going to do some yard work or something along those lines. If it's a rule breaking issue, I mean, this isn't a time to just be like, all right, it's a free for all, no rules. But you want to be careful watching your own tone. We're stressed out, so kind of pay attention to where you are and
Yeah.
where you're coming from, because you may be thinking about bills, they do something relatively minor, and you lose it. And that happens. We do, as parents, we lose it. And when we lose it, it's
Mhm.
important to go back and you're like, hey, that wasn't about you. I'm really stressed out. I didn't like what you did, but I'm sorry. I lost it and I'm sorry. We have to model the behavior we want to see in our kids. We can't be bickering and snapping and all the time, and then your kids like that and you're like, what are you doing? Of course they're acting like you. So be really mindful of your tone and what you're doing, and remember, we're all sensitive right now. We're all sensitive, and the last thing you want to do is isolate that kid even more. You really don't want to. I mean, obviously it's, you want to have limits on screen time. I don't think you want your kid up all night long watching video games. You really don't want to keep them away from everybody. You don't want to cut them off from the world. That's going to make things worse. So we're going to have to adjust to all this different time we're in,
Okay. No, I think that's really good to know because taking away devices is kind of
Mhm.
a first line of means when we may be,
Mhm.
giving consequences to an adolescent, but recognizing
Yeah.
that in the process we may be further isolating them during an already difficult and isolating enough time. So I think
Yeah.
it's important for all of us just to recognize that.
Yeah. And there's other means, especially now. I mean, obviously you can't ground anybody, but there are other means. If it is something that is absolutely a known rule that they broke, and it's important to have some sort of consequence. We can't just, like I said, it can't just be a free for all. There's other ways. Maybe they need to sweep out the garage, something along those lines, or help with a chore or something like that. But be very mindful of the cutting them off from society, because they don't have any other means right now. And taken away, I mean, there's barely any friend time as it is, so taking away those hour or so of virtual time they get is going to make the problems worse.
Yeah. Yeah. So how is it that let's say we're a family member, maybe a relative, an aunt or an uncle, or maybe even a neighbor, how is it that we can help to support our adolescents, whether we're of relation or we're not of relation, to ensure our adolescents are alive and well during this time?
I think it's important to just be mindful of what's going on in the house. I mean, if you know the kid well enough to stay connected to them through texting, phone, whatever, if you're an aunt or an uncle, or, reach out and say you're there. If you're a neighbor, be kind of mindful of what's going on and make sure, maybe you see that kid sneaking out of the house. Kids don't get social distancing. They don't understand that this
Yeah.
is really important and why this is important. And I think that's part of that dialogue you need to have with them. Like, why can we not be together? They need to really understand that, especially now we're learning more and more about asymptomatic carriers of the virus,
Yeah.
and that maybe they'll be okay, but we don't know who everybody lives with. We don't know the health issues that everybody has in their family. And so making sure they understand that. And as a neighbor, just, we still wave. We can still wave. And I think, if you can get your adolescent out of the house and take some walks around the neighborhood and wave at people and, still feel like things are normal. I think sometimes when I feel very holed up in my house, but my kids and I will go take a walk outside and it's like, okay, people are still out working in the yard. It looks normal outside. You feel like you're going to
Mhm.
go out there and it's going to be Armageddon, and it's not. And it gives you a sense of normalcy, not to mention the vitamin D and fresh air and change of pace and scenery is important. But really just being mindful of what's going on. If you don't want to be a nosy neighbor, obviously, and like up and over, don't peer into people's windows, but be mindful of that family. Maybe just, wave from your driveway and say, hey, if you guys need anything, let me know. I know a lot of people have been writing really nice messages in their driveways with chalk when you walk by, just a way to stay connected. Um, and actually, right now is a good time to get to know your neighbors. I've actually gotten to know my neighbors through some neighborhood apps that I didn't even know that were like, hey, I think you live like 2 houses down from me. So now's the time to actually kind of connect with your neighborhood in an odd way. And your adolescent probably knows a lot more about the technology and the apps and the things, the ways to connect virtually than you do. And so let them teach you some things. They'll probably be able to help you working from home better, know how to use some of that technology better than you do. So, staying involved and staying connected, because we don't have those connections. We have to remember that those connections, our adolescents, they're some of the last group that want to be stuck at home with their family. Their lives really focus on their friends and their social life. And we have to remember, like, we have to be a substitute for that in a way. And they're not maybe going to like it at first, and so not being
Absolutely.
too pushy, but just being like, hey, I'm here. I'm here for you.
Wonderful. Well, Chrissy, I wanna post back those important numbers that you shared with us. Um, and I just want to take a moment to recap what I heard of that we still need to keep as much normalcy as possible during this time, holding on to our traditions and as much as possible continuing to incorporate those. Also, just making sure that we validate the experiences that our adolescents, there's a lot of loss that they're experiencing right now, and it's a new and unknown time. So being sure to validate, but making sure that as caregivers that we're tuning into various signs, recognizing that for some of our adolescents, they may need some additional love and support during this time, and not being afraid to reach out to those resources available, knowing that there's still a lot of resources out there. Anything else that we want to really just kind of highlight or emphasize before we before our time today concludes?
Just that we're all in this together, and that we have to remember this is traumatic for all of us in different ways. And
Mhm.
we all just need to be kind to ourselves and stay connected with each other as much as we can. I've seen a lot of families come together, actually, when I talk to a lot of my clients, that people who maybe were thinking, oh, we're all going to kill each other, and then they're actually like, no, we're actually eating dinner together and playing board games. So you know we can reframe this time as kind of a gift to be, on pause and reconnect in simpler ways with people.
I love that. Just making sure that we see the opportunity in
Hmm.
this that we have.
Even if it's just an opportunity to rest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Chrissy, thank you so very much for joining us today and sharing all that important information as well as those resources that are available to us during this time. And for those of you joining us here on the Daily Dose, your Daily Dose challenge is going to be to reach out to an adolescent, recognizing the unique experiences that they have during this time and being sure that we validate those. And now we're also going to ask for our viewers that you share this widely because we want to recognize that everyone could use a daily dose of support. And we want to make sure that our adolescents are also alive and well. So again, Chrissy, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this important information. And
Well,
for our
thank you for
viewers,
having me.
tune in tomorrow as we get a chance to talk and explore some more about how to support ourselves during this time. Bye.
Hi, thank you.